Welcome to Discuss With Us podcast, where we are unpacking the world through a Christian lens. I am your host, Darcy Durkowski, along with my husband, Brian, and our intention is to pose topics, trending and otherwise, and unpack them with the help of some research, insights from our different backgrounds, and even some listener input in a way that is thought-provoking and entertaining. So get comfortable, grab your favorite beverage, and discuss with us.
Welcome back to another episode of Discuss With Us. This is Brian along with my wife Darcy on the ones and twos across the way.
Hello, everyone.
First off, I want to thank everyone who's given us a listen. We definitely appreciate that. And now I think we're up and running on all major platforms, right, Darcy?
Yes, it took us a little bit, but we're on Spotify, Apple, Audible, and even YouTube. So all of my correspondence and everything that I'm really posting and, throwing polls out there and doing all that's on Instagram. So our Instagram is at discuss_with us. And yeah, go give that page a follow and keep up with us. And we'll be throwing out some topics and getting some feedback from you guys there.
Yes, please give us a like and follow if you can. Share us with your friends. Before we get going, wanted to give you guys a Lent update on us. Darcy, how are you doing?
Okay, if I'm honest, I had one slip up with the sweets
Oh, just
this
one?
week. Yes. But overall, I'm feeling pretty good.
Well, that's good. Yeah, this week was my birthday. So I feel like I get a little grace there. Had a little bit of a slip up on the birthday, ate some cake, but you bought that, so it's really more on you than it is on me.
Yeah. Well, we had to have a birthday cake for
Of course,
the
no.
kids.
How could they didn't even like it, so now we're stuck. Luckily, it's not a
Yeah.
big cake. But yeah, so had a little bit of the cake, and then it's also just my birthday, so I got taken out to eat at work and stuff, and I've done pretty good. Fortunately, when I'm making up my own clean eating routine, that also means I kind of get to dictate it as I go. So I am finding a few things that are maybe stretching the limits of where I thought I was going to be. But we're getting there. I've somewhat made it through eating out at a couple restaurants. Just had to change what I was going to do a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that you give yourself enough credit. You've held pretty tight. So,
Better than I would have thought I did. I went to Saltgrass and it had a salad, so that in itself ought to be a win.
that is an accomplishment. Yes.
All right, so I had fun with this last time, so I decided I was going to do a Catholic fun fact for the week. If it's Friday and you're not feeling like fish, just know that apparently you can enjoy alligator. That has been deemed a fish only when it comes to Fridays. But so if you're more of a gator tail kind of guy or gal, apparently you can have that. Also, if you were French back in the 1600s, you could enjoy a nice puffin.
I actually think I've heard of that before.
A
Is that a
puffin?
bird?
I didn't even know what a puffin was. I
Yeah.
had to Google it. It's a little bird, kind of black and white, orange beak. And I was reading, apparently they dive into the water to eat fish. And so they decided that counted, I guess, since they swam, that it would count as a fish. And I actually looked up what puffin tastes like, and everyone says it kind of has a fishy taste. So I guess that's close enough.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I know
So-
my Louisiana family would enjoy that alligator fact. So
Yeah, well, me too. I might have to get on that before this Lent's over. All right, so for this week, fortunately, we didn't have to do a lot of digging to find a topic. Seems like the world just went and dropped one on a bunch of us.
Yeah, so what we decided to talk about this week was the cell phone outage that happened yesterday.
Yeah, so I saw it come across the news when we woke up. I think it came across my phone, and I saw a couple people on social media were complaining about their phones not working, but ours were. So I assumed it was a tower down or whatever. Didn't really know the severity of the situation until later in the afternoon. And because my phone worked the whole time, I guess shout out Verizon, I was a late arrival to this. Do you know exactly what happened?
I wouldn't say that I know exactly what happened, but
Well, you know what I
skimmed
mean.
I've skimmed a couple of news articles, and from what I've seen, I think there were over like 70,000 people without service.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, mainly AT&T, but also some other carriers like Verizon and T-Mobile. Um, and the freakiest thing I've heard, which, like I said, I don't know how true this is, but I heard it was like with the other carriers that only those that were like talking to someone who had AT&T lost their service, which I don't know how that would work. So
So,
maybe it's
like, if
not
you
true.
had another phone and you were talking to someone with AT&T, your phone went out too?
Yeah,
Oh, so it was like a virus.
I guess. I don't know. That's like I said, that's what was kind of freaky about it, but I don't know if that's true. So,
Well, it sounds good. We're going to go with it. That would be enough to freak me out too.
yeah. Yeah, so yeah, I'd ask you where your head went with this news, but I feel like you didn't know about it until it was pretty much over.
Yeah, yeah, I didn't. So, and as we mentioned the last time that we listened to podcasts, so I listen to a lot of sports podcasts that are basically just the radio played
Mm-hmm.
later, and I can fast forward through the commercials. But it really wasn't until I was listening to that later in the afternoon that
Mm.
I was like, oh, wow, this was a lot bigger and broader than I thought. Like, people couldn't call into the shows and their phones weren't working, and they were kind of in the same boat as me. Everyone was just assuming it was nothing, but then I was realizing there's a lot more hysteria going on with a lot of other people, which I also understand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, initially I just thought there must be a tower down because my first inkling was that I saw somebody post on Facebook that they were getting weird messages on their phone or it was just saying SOS or whatever it was. And so I just thought a tower was down. That's happened around here before, right?
Yeah.
But then I got on Instagram and one of my friends had posted a little story, and she was freaked out
Uh huh.
that that I guess all of their phones weren't working, or maybe I don't even know that hers weren't working, but just with the outage, she was freaked out. She'd already had her kids at school and stuff, and
That makes sense.
yeah. And so I know it shook people. I mean, things canceled. Again, my head kind of goes to the kids at school and all this stuff, but field trips and like extracurriculars, I think canceled.
Really?
Yeah. So yeah, thank goodness it only lasted until the afternoon, or we may not have made it.
All right, hold on. Isn't that just a little? I get it, right? In today's world, phones aren't working. Everyone's got to go in lockdown. But when I was in school, I'm fairly certain no one had a cell phone. As a matter of fact, I remember probably like junior high or something, I had a phone that would probably take up more than the pockets of my pants right now
Hmm.
that my parents would give me. I must have had to keep it in my backpack. And that was literally only to call them when we were almost back to the school so they'd know when to come pick us up.
Yeah.
But other than that, like nobody had phones back then. We went on field trips, whenever you needed to.
Yeah, I mean, how wild is it that 15 years ago, not everyone had cell phones, and now we're just basically unable to function without them?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, do you even remember your first phone at all? Like we're saying 15 years ago, it might be more than that before anyone was really using them, I think.
Yeah, so I was in eighth grade, and I don't feel like doing that math right now, but
Eighth grade, man, you got yours early.
yeah, I think it was the end of eighth grade, but yeah, I did. I know I was at the junior high. Mine was let's see, it started with was it Nokia?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
Nokia. That was the gold standard back then.
Yeah, we called it the brick
Yep,
later on, and it had the snake game on it.
of course.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's basically all I did on it.
Another fun fact for this, I think we did this as a science fair project. We took all of the old school phones and did like drop tests on them, which is really funny given everyone having these iPhones and everything that if they just look at the ground, they crack. But we took all these, and I'm not kidding. We had the phones. Dax will remember this. We threw them out the window on Highway 36 and
Oh my gosh.
tried to see which ones would still work. And I think the Nokia brick won. If I'm pretty sure that's the one that won.
I'm sure your parents loved those kinds of
Yeah, they
experiments.
did keep working. So
Mm.
whatever. Phones were more durable back then. My first I got not eighth grade. It was didn't get phones until we could drive. So I would have been a sophomore, like second around this time of year. I think I got it for my birthday, and I had the Motorola Flip, and I remember it was cool because it had a camera. Um, so phones had obviously been out for a little bit because mine had a camera that took terrible pixelated pictures or whatever. But the Flip, man, I remember that was pretty dope.
Yeah, so the Razor was a good one. I had that pretty
Yeah,
shortly
definitely got
after.
that.
Well, I guess maybe like two phones later. I only had a phone. My parents got me a phone because I had a lot of extracurriculars going on, and so they would, that way they could. We lived 25 minutes out of town, kind of. So
And they just wanted to keep track of you.
yeah,
Now you can keep track of them better. You can actually track them.
I know, kind of freaky too. Um, My favorite phone pre iPhone though was I had a BlackBerry. I think I could still go back to the BlackBerry.
I had a BlackBerry for a while. That keyboard was pretty cool. I had one, and for the life of me, have never been able to figure out what phone it was. I know I could probably find it because I had it when I went to college. So it would have been summer, and it had just come out, and they had the Sony Walkman phone. This
Mm.
was so going back, you had to have your iPod and everything separate. This was I want to say the Sony phone was like the first one that you had. You could probably fit like 10 songs on it, but you could put music on your phone. It was life changing.
Yeah.
And I didn't have the Sony Walkman one, but there was another one. It was black. It was probably half the size of the iPhone I'm holding right now. And it played, back then we called them all MP3s.
Mm-hmm.
And I only had it. I got it that summer, and I lost it in my first semester of college at A&M. And I can't remember what brand it was, any of that. But that was my favorite phone, probably because I just didn't have it long.
It's probably like a Go phone or something.
No, no, I did have those. I had my parents would never have the texting or anything on our
Mm,
phones because back then you had to pay for it and everything.
mm-hmm.
So I had some Go phones that I say some. I would get one and it would break or whatever. But
So
I
did you have
remember,
like a burner phone so you could send text messages?
yes, I did have a burner phone for text messages. Not knowing, well, because the thing was, even back then, as soon as texts came out, nobody really used calling features anymore. I
Yeah.
mean, that's where like our generation, people like older than us don't get it. But as soon as you
Mm-hmm.
could text, that was it. That was all people wanted to do.
Yeah.
I blame that on the instant messenger days.
Yes.
I mean, we grew up on MSN and AOL, and that's all you did. So now you
Mm-hmm.
could do it on your phone. Well, my phone wouldn't really do that. It was like 99 cents a text or whatever. And I remember thinking, if I don't open the text, like if you just send something short to me, then it won't cost anything.
Oh.
And I don't know if that was actually true or not. Probably not. But so, yeah, I had a burner phone just so I could text like three or four of my friends to know what was going on because I didn't want to be the lame guy who called anybody.
So there's so much more on cell phones now. Obviously, that escalated quickly.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess now, see, I was out of high school because I think what iPhone came out, was it '07, '08, somewhere in there. I was out
Mm-hmm.
of high school. I remember that.
Yeah. I don't remember the years very well.
Were you an early adopter to it, or?
Somewhat early adopter to it. Like I said, I had that BlackBerry, but I do know I did have the iPhone before I went to college.
Do you
So,
remember all the panic that used to come in for like the
oh yeah,
first few iPhone? Like
when they rolled
now,
out.
yeah, now it's so
Hmm.
crazy. The new one drops and it's like, oh, just order it and they just
I don't
give it to
even
you
know what
immediately.
number we're on.
Yeah, we're on like 15, I think, or something. I don't know.
I have no idea.
Maybe more than that. I'm just shooting from the hip with a number. But I remember like when the first couple came out, you had to like wait in line. It was like
Hmm.
the old school Black Friday shopping. You had to like wait outside. And if you didn't get that first run of them, you had to wait like a couple of months, which was why I was like, there's nothing worth this. I was a Motorola man, so I wasn't about it. So it took me a long, I did not get my first iPhone until at least 2012, if not 2013. So I made it a good
Yeah.
5, maybe 6 years before I got one. I was probably this close to being an Android guy because of that. I was kind of anti-Apple at the time. Didn't have MacBooks, iPads, any of that. I was just the opposite of Apple, and I don't know if we'd be married
Yeah, I
if
don't
that
know
was the
if we would have
case.
worked out.
Yeah, so think I bought the first one I got. It was a secondhand iPhone. My phone broke. Someone had an old iPhone, and they were like, "Here, I'll sell this one to you for like I don't know, $50 or whatever." And I was like, "Okay, fine." And from then, I was hooked.
Mm-hmm.
Realized how much better it was. But I think that was the first. I had a BlackBerry, so that's pretty much a smartphone. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
guess technically it was, but not to the extent they are now.
Yeah.
But not till like 2012, 2013 did I actually have a smartphone.
Hmm. And now they're just so smart. I mean, there are calendars. They're a handheld computer.
Better than a computer.
Yeah, yeah, arguably better. Um, do you miss the old days?
So that's really funny. And I don't know how much of it changes with our age or how much of it is job written or having kids. But it's like, if you asked me that 10 years ago, absolutely not. If
Mm-hmm.
you asked me that 5 years ago, absolutely not. And to the point, whenever a new one came out, like you almost wanted yours to break to just get the new one, even though
Mm-hmm.
nothing was even changing with it. You just needed the new one. Oh, this camera is better, and
Yeah,
I can't even tell the difference. But now, yes, absolutely. I wish it was back to the old days.
yeah. So that kind of brings up a topic and something I wanted to cover today is I feel like the the pendulum is swinging back a little
Yeah,
bit.
they say they. I saw a thing where I thought Motorola was dead in the water. I didn't even think they existed, and I think they started making the Razor again, like the
Yeah.
real Razor, not the.
Well, the razor will never be dead.
No, well, I thought it was. When's the last time you saw anything Motorola?
I don't know, but I have a terrible memory and I can still vividly picture that phone. But let's stay on topic here. The pendulum swinging back. So I feel like, you know, we just called this thing like a mini handheld computer. So much convenience wrapped up in it, right?
Yeah.
Um, but I feel like people are starting to set down convenience and go for quality.
Well, and you see that in a lot of aspects of life. I mean, look,
Mm-hmm.
McDonald's takes hits. People are more into the Five Guys, or if you have to walk inside. Well, they don't go inside, right? They
Yeah.
Grubhub it or whatever. But
Oh, yeah, that's true.
so I
We
guess
can
it's
only do so
technically the
much.
same. Yeah. But like the fast food, that they've been saying that for a few years now. Like, people are wanting quality over convenience in those aspects
Mm-hmm.
with the food. And I guess that's maybe carrying over to technology. The reason I brought up the Razor was they were saying the reason they were making those again was young kids wanted those phones.
Mm.
So I guess it's not just like when we were wearing bell bottom jeans like the 70s, they say everything's cyclical. I guess
Mm-hmm.
the phones now are too. The young
Yeah.
kids apparently want those more than these because this
Yeah.
is what your parents have.
Oh, yeah, that kind of hits.
A little bit different, huh?
It does. It does. But, think about too, like, think about when was Wonder Bread the first loaf of bread?
Yeah, we watched that History of Food. I think it was.
Yeah.
It
Also,
was the first sliced one, I
that's
think.
a really interesting show, by the way. The
Yeah.
history, or what is it? What is it called?
History of no what foods built America. The
Yeah,
foods that built
foods that
America.
build America.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. But anyways, so when a loaf of bread was first put out there in that way, sliced and everything, and everybody lost their minds over it because wow, what convenience!
Are you
And
saying bread and the iPhone are the same?
no, not at all. I'm just using a very specific example here.
All right, cool.
Okay, so follow me. So that was a big deal, right? Well, now, I mean, now everybody I know is baking sourdough bread.
Ah, that's a good point. Yeah, all that homemaker stuff you follow,
Yeah. Yeah, and it's hard to tell because you can get in your little circles, right? But
of course.
I feel like a lot of people are starting to pick up that kind of thing or want to make things from scratch
Or
again.
if nothing else, you see like farmers markets are more popular.
Yeah.
People want to buy small or grow it themselves, buy it on
Yeah.
that small market. Back in the day, you used to go to, there were no supermarkets. You went to the
Yeah.
meat market, you went to the bakery, you went to the produce store, you went to all of those places. And then
And then we wrapped it all up in with a bow in Walmart and HEB, and then now people might be kind of backing off of that.
and now you can buy it all on your phone.
Well, yeah, that's true. So in some ways we progress and in some ways we regress, I guess.
Yeah, but I do definitely see the pendulum swinging back, especially for me. So I was saying, at different times and stuff, if you'd asked me, I would have had different answers. And if nothing else, one of the big problems with every single one of us having these things is we're never off work. Like
Mhm.
on average, I would say I probably get a minimum of 20 phone calls. That's not counting the ones that are scam or telemarketers, but that's just phone calls. 20. If I miss it, I'm calling people back, and then God knows how many texts, because you fill up a lot of those, and I try not to count those during my daily routine.
Hey.
So, well, it's just the truth. Like I try to think of like what's just work oriented, but
Yeah.
I'm probably not a stretch to say like 30 or 40 texts.
Mhm.
So you've got all those, you got the phone calls, and then your emails on your phone too. And what happens is you're not off work at 5:30.
Yeah.
You even have two phones. I used to
Yeah.
think the problem was I really screwed up not getting a separate line for work, and now I don't
Mhm.
know how to separate it because all these people have the same phone number for me. I like the only thing I could think of is get a new number for friends and family.
Yeah.
But then now you have a work iPhone and a personal, and your work iPhone goes off at all hours, and
Yeah,
we're never unplugged. We're never off.
no. At night I literally have to turn my work phone over so that it won't light up all night long.
Yeah, well, or it's like a nightlight for us
Yeah.
because it just goes off all night.
So yeah, I feel like we have definitely lost some compartmentalization that our parents and our grandparents used to have when it comes to work and not even just work though. I mean just kind of being like plugged into the world out there rather than coming home to like your family.
Yeah, and so like separately at some point we'll probably talk specifically on like social media and apps and everything that's obviously plugged
Right.
into these things. But just as a case in point, I don't know if this has freaked you out with our kids yet or not. And I don't really think we're that bad as scrollers, but clearly we are. Like, okay, so seriously, even our youngest at 1 years old, it's like they already know how to like work the phone.
Yeah, he
I like,
already can like swipe.
yeah, to the point I've seriously questioned like, have we somehow like bred this into the kids that like their thumbs just because like he barely walks, but his thumbs work and he can scroll the phone. Our other two older ones, they already know how to like scroll through the pictures. I mean, they're already ready for these
Mhm.
apps where they can swipe right and left.
Ugh, let's not even go there.
I thought that was
So
funny.
so here's the other thing that has made me die a little inside before. If I leave my phone in another room, the kids will bring it to me and be like, "Here, mommy, you left your phone." I'm like,
Yeah,
"Ugh,
because they think we need it.
yeah."
No, and that gets us back to when these phones aren't working. Like
Hmm.
beyond, so there's a separate side of this we'll look at, which is the hysteria that can ensue with it.
Hmm.
But the other thing with these phones, like I said, separate from just the apps, just the needing it. Like I feel naked if I don't
Hmm.
have it. Like I will just today I left the house without my wallet, and I was like, yeah, no
Hmm.
big deal. But if I leave the house without my phone, it's like I can't make it through the day, right?
Yeah.
So just like you said, we leave the phone in another room, and everyone's bringing our phone to us like it's part of us. It's our
Yeah.
battery pack to charge us back up. Mom and dad can't operate without it. Even if it's just in our pocket, they just know it's always with us.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing I was thinking about, because at first, whenever I heard about this and people freaking out, like, "Oh, my phone doesn't work," I think the other thing is our phone. It really is such a big part of our work, like we're saying, and so it's I don't know, maybe past generations had more clock in or meet up here type jobs before they went out
Yeah.
and did their work. And now we're all kind of a little more mobile or a little more on our own or on the fly. I don't know. But it does feel like, oh my gosh, how am I going to let somebody know where I'm going to be or what I'm doing, or how am I going to find out where I need to be and
Yeah,
what I
that's a
can
good
do?
point. Like, I don't even check in.
Yeah.
I just go wherever I need to go. Nobody, if they need me, they call me
Yeah.
or, whatever.
Yeah.
So, okay. Do you think the pendulum ever swings back?
In regards to cell phones,
Yeah.
can cell phones be simplified? I don't know. There's a lot of convenience tied up in them that I think we do need and probably is good. Like, I mean, I remember my dad toting around what do they call it? A PDA, a
Yeah.
calendar planner kind of thing, whatever. Um, and that is all nice to be in a cell phone. But
I don't know. I use a handwritten planner.
yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I handwrite everything too. So,
I hate
yes,
I
maybe
hate the
so.
calendar on the phone. That's the thing that drives me the most nuts.
Yeah. Um, I definitely think we might see some simplification there.
It's gonna have to start with the I guess the youth teenagers today.
Choosing a different look,
Yeah.
like you're saying with that razor, going back to the razor.
Because we're all in too deep. I can't like we're nostalgically looking at this.
Mm-hmm.
I can't actually remember what it was like to not have all of this at my fingertips. Like I can't think about how it was, oh, I had to watch the news in the morning. It wasn't on my phone. I had to keep up with sports on TV. It wasn't on my phone. There was
Mm-hmm.
no social media. I had to turn my away message off from AOL, make sure I got some messages back in.
Or I mean, especially like with your with your job, you you might YouTube something how to yada yada yada.
Yeah, honest, that's how I get by.
Tell your secrets.
Exactly.
But yeah, and then just having like Safari, Google right there at our
But
fingertips.
to have our lives back, I would gladly give it up. Give me the wall phone with the cord. Let's just do it.
Yeah, I think what would be really interesting, and maybe we will soon find this out, but I wonder how quickly we would just be like experience relief almost.
I want to experience a party line.
Oh my gosh.
My parents are like that. I've heard of the stories.
Yeah, I was gonna say I never did that. Did you?
No, I'm not that old, Darcy. I'm only a little bit older than you. All right, let's pivot here. Okay,
Yeah.
so that was talking about the phones taking over our lives. Now,
Mm-hmm.
let's go to the other side of this coin where all the hysteria was coming out because our phones weren't working. And I think there's multiple examples we have of this. When I was reading about this, and we haven't even talked about this part, I went back to, do you remember, I think it was 2018 when the emergency alert went out in
Yeah.
Hawaii.
Yeah.
That was where my head went to when all those people thought they
I
had like
forgot about
30
that
minutes
too.
to live.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have examples of this
Mm-hmm.
happening and how people react. And I remember reading stories about it then. Some people were going to shelters and then they would go in these shelters and their phones didn't work. So
Mm-hmm.
they got that emergency alert, went into a bunker and had no idea when
Yeah.
it would be safe to come out. And so we just have these reactions in this, perfectly human, perfectly normal fear because the world is a scary place. I
Yeah.
mean, I didn't, like I said, my phone wasn't affected, so I didn't think this way. But I've seen, what was it, the Die Hard, where it was they
Yeah.
take out the phones, power, water, and it's like a terrorist attack, a fire sale, or whatever they call it. Like, had my phone not worked, I guarantee you I would have been there.
You definitely would have taken that deep
Yeah, I would
dive.
have been ready. Grab the bug out bag, we're going.
So I was, this had me thinking about other things, not even related to just cell phones, but it feels like we have had several instances in the last several years that have caused people to doomsday prep.
Yeah, to the point where like expecting it.
Yeah. just waiting for the toilet paper to not be there tomorrow when we go grocery
Well, the
shopping.
world's pretty crazy, so I mean,
Yeah.
I could see it happening at
No,
any
and
moment.
and this isn't downing anybody because we have definitely grabbed the toilet paper.
Yeah, I still have extra food in our pantry from when I said we need to stock up on food.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
That's
don't think
probably going to go
that
bad now.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But one thing I did want to talk about is just, the big glaring one is living through COVID. I mean, how wild was
The
that?
world stopped. I, I
Yeah.
I thought back on this the other day, and I don't know how all of your lives were changed by it, like when it first happened. Um, but I didn't go to work for like 3 months.
Hmm.
I don't know if you remember that because we just moved in here and we had a lot of stuff to do, so it kind of just all blended together.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a blessing for us off the bat. And I was still getting paid. That was the other
Hmm.
crazy thing about it. And we were working by phone and
Hmm.
stuff. But
Doing what you could. Yeah.
but yeah, exactly. I do construction, so I was doing what by phone exactly.
Yeah.
Um, but that was all we could do. But we didn't go to work
Hmm.
for 3 months.
Yeah.
And that was maybe the lesser of what happened to other people.
Yeah, definitely. Um, so my point in bringing this up is that I feel like people are ready to be panicky ever since that. I feel like that has everybody a little bit on edge when things like even weather and like the grid failing and
Oh
things
yeah, I
like
forgot
that.
about that. Yeah.
Yeah, so we've had some stuff that is keeping everybody pretty on edge. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about is how we handle that where we aren't overreacting or underreacting. Is that a
Yeah.
word?
Well, it is now.
Underreacting.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
can coin it.
Um, because you hear of people overreacting and taking all the toilet paper in this example off the shelves and food. I mean, that has happened.
Oh, and we're in Texas, so
Yeah.
we haven't caught the brunt of it. But other places, you saw it just crazy.
Yeah. Um, so how do we not be those people and take more than we need and overreact and cause more panic? But how do we also make sure that we're diligent and prepared, I guess? So this is where we're going to kind of bring it into, looking at it through a Christian lens and how God would have us react. And I think one thing that is important to note here, because I hear people say all the time, I'm afraid for this time we're living in. I'm afraid for my kids and my grandkids and
Yeah.
things like that. Um, and I'm not discrediting that at all, but this while COVID was crazy and we can be living in crazy times, the world has been crazy for a long time.
Oh yeah, yeah. This didn't just start.
Right. So I wanted to look and consider when the world has been going crazy before, what has Jesus said about it? And what has the Bible said about it? And a couple of kind of keywords, I guess, that came to my mind is peace. As Christians, we're supposed to have peace, and we do. We we experience God's peace. I've felt that every time that I've lost someone, even somewhat close to me, you feel God's
Hmm.
peace. And so John 16:33 says, I have said these things to you, and this is Jesus saying this, that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but take heart, I have overcome the world. Um, and the key thing here to me in this verse is it says, in the world you will have tribulation.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I would count some of these things that we've talked about as tribulation for sure. But in God, we can have peace. So I think we just have to balance that and not, hopefully, not get panicky. We can have peace, but that also doesn't mean that we sit and let the world spin around us either.
No, you want to be prepared, and this is something that I've always somewhat struggled with, and it happens when you start thinking about death as well. Um, you want to be,
Mortality.
yeah, you want to be, and you hear about the desire is when you get older. It's almost like you welcome death. It's just the next chapter and stuff, and that sounds really poetic to say, but most people have a fear of that, and that's what
Hmm.
kicks in with all this. And so when when things like your phone not working in these days
Yeah.
pops up and we start flying off the rails, it is that delicate balance of, you want to be prepared for your family. We have kids,
Mhm.
but then also, even if it is something bad, have peace knowing that you're in, good standing with the Lord.
Right. Um, some of the better testimonies that I've heard are from someone who watched someone else go through something terrible that they couldn't understand, but just seeing that that person had peace through it all. And because of that, they came to know Christ because they had to know how they were even able to stand something like that. So I think our peace, maintaining our peace through all of our struggles and all of the things that we face and all of the worldly tribulation, like Jesus said we would have, is a great way to witness to those around us.
Oh, that's a really good point.
Yeah. So, also doesn't mean that we just, you know, stay in our little peaceful corner and watch the world fall apart. God also talks about, being watchful and prepared. He talks about, I think he says being, talk,
Vigilant, isn't it?
mm-hmm. Yeah, he talks about being vigilant and then watchful. I think he says that in that parable about like the bridal party. He wants
Yes.
you to be watchful and vigilant. So it can be. I feel like where we can get caught is just understanding where we should fall in the balance, maintaining our peace, but also being prepared and knowing, when we need to intervene and knowing when we need to turn off the news, how
Hmm.
involved or uninvolved we need to be in some of that. And so I can get really lost there. I don't know. Sometimes I do just cut off the news because um, I can't take all of it, but I also don't want to be uninformed. And so, thinking
Yeah.
about that in reference to this, the only other thing from Scripture that I was thinking about is God's wisdom, right? And it's one of the things that I hear my dad saying all the time. He would always talk about how God will give anybody wisdom if they ask. That's one of the things that he doesn't say, like, well, if you ask and or if it's my will, it apparently is always God's will to grant us wisdom when we ask it, and that's scriptural.
Exactly.
Um, I think found the scripture. Let's see. I think it's James 1:5. It says, "If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all without reproach, and it will be given him." So that's the other thing here. I think that we have to do is maintain our peace and ask for God's wisdom on what He would have us do to follow His will and continue living. I mean, He put us here in this world, so He knew we were going to be dealing with this stuff. We just kind of have to ask for His guidance.
Exactly. All right. So just to summarize what we were doing here. So in the first part, we were talking about just the sheer fact of all these phones that we have, how plugged in we are, maybe some things we can do to swing that pendulum back if we want to. I think probably most of us out there think these phones have a pretty decent hold on us.
Yeah, it
And
seems like people are wanting to.
yeah, exactly. So, you know, I am from here, and there's no guide for this, but I'm gonna try to be a lot better. And we've done little phases of this before. Of when the boys are home, they'll probably go looking for our phones, but maybe even if it's just an hour a day. Just go set it. And I do this sometimes, but need to get a lot better of it. Of just trying to lessen that hold it has over us, and kind of
Right.
kind of go without for a little bit. That way, like you've always used the words, like make sure we're being present.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's the first part of it. And then when our phones aren't working, and maybe some of us are ready to freak out, like I would have had mine not. Um, have some peace. Know that it's gonna be okay, even if it's not. We've all gone through a lot. I make the joke that the people who lived in the 20s dealt with the stock market crash and then had World War II right after it. At least they had that spread out over 30 years. We've gone through a lot in the past 5 or 6. So
Yeah, it's
there's a
true.
reason we're all on edge. Anxieties through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
Historically, if you look at the data. So
Right.
it makes sense. But, for that, a lot of us Christians out here, we just need to to kind of take a deep breath and know that it's going to be okay no matter what the outcome is.
Right.
We know where we're going. We're going to get there together. So that's the summary of that. Now, next week, I have something fun that I think we're going to do. We've already done this. We took personality tests. I'm going to highly encourage you do it. And the reason, we'll get into more of this on that podcast, but just a little backstory for it. Darcy had to do one for work.
Right.
And I couldn't stand just not doing one. And we actually hadn't done one of these together and kind of looked at it together as a couple. So
Compatibility wise.
yeah, exactly. So the ones we were looking at, I can't remember. I think we did it off of Truity or something like that.
And
But
it was a Myers-Briggs.
yeah, that's what I was going to say. The biggest point of it is, for the purpose of this, if you can do a Myers-Briggs, that's the one that gives you the 4 letters. So if you want to, it'll make it a little more interesting listening to this, but do a Myers-Briggs and kind of compare it with you and your friends, you and your spouse, whatever, because there's a lot of layers to this. And for us, it was pretty spot on for things we could use for conflict resolution, our interests, how we communicate and stuff like that. And these are things that are important for you to use with your spouse. Like, we did it for work, but we're finding other interests to use it for. So
yeah, just across the board, because it gave a lot of tips on like how I should be managed, what I should be doing, and that can be, pointed towards work, but then also just in other relationships. So yeah, very interesting.
yeah, absolutely. So to sum it up, we're going to try to put the phones down, not let them have the hold on us, and then we're going to have peace when the phones aren't working or other things.
We're gonna try anyway. All right, so go keep up with us on the Instagram page in case we throw up any polls or stories. Maybe I'll share a link for where we did our personality test.
Oh, that would be pretty cool. That way we could all use the same one. Not that you have to, but I think the language changes a little bit site to site. And just disclaimer, you don't have to pay for it. You'll see some of them asking, to pay to get your results. You get the results. You just get more data if you pay. So
Right.
you don't have to do all of that. All right. Well, I appreciate everyone joining us, listening in. And, now that we've unpacked the world, you go discuss.